I'm ready.
Okay, so I guess just start with your name and your
Hi, I'm Gordy Ainsleigh.
your name and
As was just mentioned, I'm a legend, and I didn't have to die to become one, because I started the sport of ultramarathon trail running, or as we say, trail ultra running, back in 1974, right here. In fact, I'm looking at the trail right now that I came through in the wee hours of the morning, probably 3 in the morning. Came right over there, went up that hill. So the story is that after 2 successful completions of the 100-mile ride from Squaw Valley to Auburn in 1971 and 72, I gave my horse away to a girlfriend who, unbeknownst to me, was leaving me for a guy with really good drugs. And so I got left having to buy another horse, and I wasn't nearly as lucky on the second time. And I had bought a horse that the seller assured me had never taken a lame step, which it turns out had a lameness problem, and he'd been told it was permanent. So anyway, that's the horse I bought, attempted to do the ride in 73. The horse went lame, and because I spend so much time on the ground, I weigh over 200 pounds, and so I took pity on the horse, and I'd get off and lead him into the canyons, and then I'd grab his tail, and he could pull me out of the canyons instead of carrying me, and it made it a lot easier for him. Anyway, I'd been doing that, and the people who put on the race had been noticing that, and they knew I had a lot of running ability, so they invited me the year after my horse went lame in 73 to run it in 74, which was the 20th anniversary of the ride. And so I did it. It wasn't like, there's this rumor that my horse was declared lame at the starting line, or actually went lame during the race, and I just said, oh, no problem, I'm going to do this on foot, without training, of course. And that's absurd. I was training for the Levi Ride and Tie at the time. I was in wonderful shape for marathon running, and even a little bit beyond that. I had run 50 miles the year before, and I trained specifically for this race for 6 weeks by running from Michigan Bluff. The last 40 miles I ran. I ran it 4 times in the last 6 weeks. So it wasn't done without training, but right over there is the trail I was going on at 3 in the morning, headed into Auburn on one of the longest days of my life. Quite an amazing experience. I figured someday what I'd done would become an event comparable to the Western States ride, and instead it's far surpassed it, which is surprising to me. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that the running I started would, I figured someday we'd have a run in Australia just like we have a ride in Australia. But I didn't expect that, now we have 100-mile runs, and I heard of one in Sweden, which is kind of interesting. They did a 100-mile run. They do kilometers, but they made an exception for the 100-mile run. Anyway, this is where it all began. Well, the temperature in Cool that day was 107, and Cool's right over there. No, right there. It was 107 that day in Cool. I don't know what the temperature was up top. Of course, as you go in high altitude, it gets a little cooler, but it was awfully hot. There had recently been a forest fire come through at what is about the 40-mile mark, which we go through about 1, 2 in the afternoon. And it was so hot because the ground was covered with charcoal and there were no trees left. All the little bushes had come up. They were about that high. No, about that high. And a lot of bare ground. It was kind of like running in the Grand Canyon. It was very hot. It got to the point where I couldn't even focus on the ground. I was running on the road, I couldn't focus on the road convection currents. I don't know, maybe my head was baking too. It was amazing. The first 15 miles of the well, actually it was more than that. The first 30 miles I was having to deal with the horses, which go faster than a runner on the flat and slower on a downhill. And so I was forced to not run my speed, not run my best pace. That was really a problem. I was actually tired by the time I was out there about 15 miles. I remember crossing the thing going on to Red Star Ridge and thinking, God, if I'm already tired, how in the world am I going to do 100 miles? And of course the answer was, you're going to slow down, boy. So anyway, I did slow down quite a bit. I actually had decided when I got down into the canyon, the first canyon, which was at 45 miles, I had decided I was going to quit. But then the reason was because when I got to the bottom, there was a horse that was dying in the river. The owner had taken it in to, freshen up, hopefully, and the horse had just collapsed from, exhaustion, dehydration. And the horse did die. There was, I instituted a vet check after that, just before you go into the canyon, and that was the end of horses dying in the canyon. Nobody's died in the canyon since then. So
Wait, so a horse died the year that you were running it?
yeah.
Did that happen quite often, or?
It would happen in those canyons on really hot days, probably once every 5 years a horse would die. And the reason, I figured out that the reason was because there wasn't a vet check just before they went into the canyon. And so I suggested to Wendell Roby, who was the godfather of the ride and the run, the founder of the ride, that he put me there as a ride officer to stop any horse that looked like it might not make it through the canyon. Well, the veterinarians immediately didn't, they got jealous of their authority, and so they put a vet check there, and that was the end of horses dying in the river or in the canyons. But it was like every 5 or 8 years, really, really hot year, a horse had died, and it was sad, but somebody had to think of that. And so, my run accomplished two things. One is no more horses died in those canyons. I mean, now if a horse dies, it's because it throws a fit and jumps off a cliff or something, which things like that just happen. But no horses dying of exhaustion and dehydration and overheating and all that stuff. That doesn't happen anymore. Anyway, as I climbed that hill after that, I helped get the horse out of the river. As I climbed that hill, I thought, if the horses are dying, this is a serious death risk for a much less adapted human being. Because we just aren't adapted to running like a horse is. There's just no question about it. So I was going to quit at the top, but when I came up to Devil's Thumb, I was met by my good friend Diane and my friend Paige Harper. Diane was a lady who's won almost every race around here on horseback, except for the Tevis. And Paige Harper was a veteran who'd won the Hagen Cup for best condition horse on the Tevis twice. So they're both very veteran endurance riders. Anyway, Diane said, "How you feeling?" I said, "I'm quitting." She said, "Well, don't quit just yet. Come on over and let's talk about it." And so she sat me under a tree, and see, I didn't know anything. I mean, she fed me salt tablets and water. I didn't realize I was out of salt, I didn't know that. And so she fed me salt tablets and water, massaged my legs. I mean, like a half hour later, I was like a new man. I felt, I guess I'll go on.